And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Salesian Sports Broadcasting System. I'm here, Mr. Dwyer, with a good group of people during this Spirit Week to bring you discussions about sports here at school and around the world. We're really glad that you've stopped by to listen to us, whether you're doing homework, on your ride home, or just bored out of your mind. That seems to happen occasionally with some people. We would like to start off on a more solemn note, just to discuss our opinions. It's been a couple of days since the events involving Kobe Bryant and a few other people, families, children who have passed in that horrible helicopter accident. And we just want to take our time today to reflect on the type of player that Kobe Bryant was, the type of person he was, and the other people who were part of this horrendous incident, what influence they've had on so many people's lives. And for this moment, we'd like to take just a few moments of silence and remembrance. Okay, so just to bring up to date some of the other people that some may not be aware that had passed in the horrible incident. One of the individuals with his family was a coach at, I believe, OACC. I believe that's the college. How it's been going through the news is he was Jeff McNeil's coach, the utility player for the Mets. He was his coach in college and really gave him a lot of support, pushed him through, along with a number of other players in the MLB. He'd been coaching for 20-plus years, big staple for that college, excellent individual, always pushed for the fun of the game rather than the pure intensity of just winning, that the fun of the game comes first and everything follows after. And looking at the type of player that Jeff McNeil became, first-time All-Star, batting over 300, you can see that he's instilled that in himself, also swinging at so many first pitches. He really has a big mentor upon him and as an individual, and it's so sad how he and his family passed in that, along with Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter. Kobe is, people are going to argue, the third in the discussion of greatest of all time regarding the NBA, for offense especially. His defense wasn't too bad, not as high caliber if you're putting in comparison to the number of blocks LeBron has had and the number of steals Jordan accumulated throughout his career, but he was a staple of great offense and finding other people when he himself was not on the top of his game. When he was younger, he was brash. He was compared to Jordan a lot. He won a dunk contest, took part in a dunk contest, something that LeBron hasn't done. He had two numbers, and he was a huge influence on the Lakers, leading them to 5 championships. A big drive to gain a lot of motivation from teams, especially when they weren't doing as well. He was the leader, the captain of the team, and everyone remembers that last game where they just kept giving him the ball. And it's hilarious hearing people from that game talking about how that was the plan before the game even started, that they were going to go and pass to him from the beginning, the entire time, until he couldn't stop shooting anymore. And it's crazy how he made those 60 and came back from a Utah team that wasn't doing that bad that year. I think they were playoff bound if they didn't make the playoffs. And everyone does remember the poor decisions that Kobe made in his life, and a lot of people have completely held it against it. But us being a Catholic school, it's important to understand the facts regarding the matter. Kobe was accused of raping a woman, and it was found in court that it was an allegation, and not a fact. It seemed that the woman was trying to allocate money from him by putting him in a bad position. Now, he did cheat on his wife, and that is completely awful and heinous. And I think that entire situation made him grow and learn from his ways. He was an excellent father and spent a lot of times with his kids, especially after he retired. And you could see it and hear from it just from the moments where he had talked about being around his daughters and being a father. Overall, it's going to be a horrible loss for the NBA, for his family. There's nothing more you can possibly discuss regarding the whole matter. Just awful altogether. And yet his memory will live on, and we move forward as best we can. And with that, we may want to go and look at a particular sport that, heck, Michael Jordan tried to play at for a little bit. Not too good, but he tried. And that's baseball. A lot of trades going on. A lot of discussion regarding the removal and hiring of coaches. And we got a lot of people here who have their opinions on particular matters and deals and the future of the MLB.
Okay, hello, this is Chris, and I just want to start off by talking about this Nick Castellanos signing. The Cincinnati Reds signed Nicholas Castellanos to a 4-year, $64 million deal. Castellanos spent mostly all of his career with the Detroit Tigers. Had some pretty solid seasons with them. Pretty solid player. Not really much of a superstar, but a solid hitter. Not a great defensive player, but a solid hitter. Good enough. This past trade deadline, he was traded to the Chicago Cubs, and he was phenomenal. I'm pretty sure he hit around over 300 with the Cubs. It just goes to show how much of a pitcher's ballpark Comerica Park is in Detroit. How imagine if he would have spent his whole career in Chicago. I can't even imagine what his numbers would have looked like. I'm playing in Wrigley Field or any other hitter-friendly ballpark. But he's going to spend the next 4 years in the Great American Ballpark, which is very much a hitter's ballpark. Definitely not a pitcher's ballpark. So, I'm excited to see what he's going to do there. He's not a great defensive player. He wasn't terrible out there in the outfield with the Cubs. Obviously, the National League doesn't have the designated hitter. There are rumors that the National League might get a designated hitter starting this season. I don't know what's going to go on with that. I kind of hope the National League does get a DH. I feel like some pitchers have gotten hurt, especially like these American League pitchers going to the National League. They get hurt because they're not really used to being on base and base running. For example, a couple years ago, back in 2018, Masahiro Tanaka got hurt after playing a game in Citi Field, and he missed a month, and he was really good that year. And that was painful for the Yankees to lose him. So, in that case, yeah. Normally, National League pitchers don't really get hurt from the base running or hitting. And it's kind of fun to watch. We've had some amazing memories of pitchers hitting. Obviously, everyone knows about Bartolo Colon's home run. That's one of the greatest baseball moments in history. Consistently, you see guys like Jacob deGrom and Steven Strasburg and these guys hitting home runs, and it's fun to watch. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it would be much better to have a DH. It would be more fair. I feel like it's not fair that the National League has pitchers batting and the American League has designated hitters. How much better is the American? The American League's not that much better than the National League, competitiveness-wise, but I just feel like it could make it even, and I don't think it's fair that one league has a guy who's a full-time hitter, and then one league has the pitcher batting. I just don't think that's fair. But anyway, we're talking about Nick Castellanos. If the National League does get a DH, he would definitely, I think, be the DH. Now, what this does, this puts him out there in left field. You have Aristides Aquino, who's a rookie. He came up Uh, he was fantastic last year for Cincinnati. He broke a record. I think he had the most game in like his first 8 games. He hit, I think, I want to say like 10 home runs in his first 8 games in the big leagues. Like, that's amazing. That was a record, I'm pretty sure, for rookies. And he's going to be expected to hit. That entire Cincinnati lineup, I mean, they just added Mike Moustakas not too long ago, this offseason. They have Joey Votto out there, over there at first, who, I mean, yeah, he's a veteran, but he's when that guy's right, he's one of the best hitters in baseball. Like, he always gets on base. But these past 2 seasons have been not. I'm sorry, just this past season hasn't really been too good for Joey Votto. They also have Eugenio Suarez, who's always hitting around 30, 40 home runs. I mean, that's crazy. They also have a top prospect, Nick Senzel, who's I think he was a top prospect in their system. He might play in center field. He might play shortstop. I don't know what they're gonna do. Second base. Although they have Mike Moustakas playing second base, and they're gonna have Eugenio Suarez at third, and Freddie Galvis at short. I don't know what's going on, but this allows the Reds to possibly be able to trade Senzel and maybe some other prospects, because they have a lot of young prospects, the Cincinnati Reds, and they could trade for someone. Maybe they can get a better shortstop, right? I don't know. Freddie Galvis had a nice year last year, but if you have a chance to trade for like a guy like, I don't know, Francisco Lindor or Nolan Arenado, maybe you move him to third and then you move Suarez to short. Something you can get a lot with these young prospects, so that gives you some flexibility. And I mean, you're just adding an overall great hitter as well. And to go along with a pretty alright bullpen with guys like Raisel Iglesias and just guys, Amir Garrett, guys like that, decent young arms in the bullpen who are pretty solid for them. And that starting rotation's fantastic with Sonny Gray. I mean, he was on the Yankees 2 years ago, and he was really bad, but now he goes to Cincinnati, and he was, I think, in the top 6 for the Cy Young Award this past season. He was fantastic for the Reds this year. They also have Trevor Bauer and Luis Castillo, who are both great starting pitchers. It's a really good starting rotation, really good lineup, all right bullpen. I think they could add to that bullpen a little bit. But that's trade. You worry about that at the trade deadline. You worry about the bullpen at the trade deadline, really. That's when you really add all these bullpen arms. But Cincinnati Reds, they're looking really good. And I think they're going to I think they're going to win the National League Central this year, because they have made the most moves in that division. The Cubs have only lost, they lost the bullpen arm. I forgot his name, to the Chicago White Sox. But the Cubs aren't getting better; they're only getting worse. The Cardinals, I mean, they lost Marcell Ozuna to the Braves. They lost a couple guys. They really haven't made much moves, except for getting that young pitcher that I talked about last week, Matt Liberatore. But I don't know what the Cardinals are doing. The Brewers, I mean, they made some small moves, like Avisaíl Garcia and Eric Sogard, like solid little players. But I think the Cincinnati Reds have just made the biggest moves. I think they're looking the best, and I think they're going to win the NL Central. Now let's talk about another team that got affected this past week, but in the NL Central, and that's the Pittsburgh Pirates. They traded their star center fielder, or I don't know if he's a star, but he's a really solid center fielder, Starling Marte. They traded him to the Arizona Diamondbacks in exchange for 2 prospects named Liover Peguero and Brennan Malone. I like this move a lot for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I honestly, I think this is a move for the Pirates that it can pay off, but it can also be probably the worst trade they ever made in their history, honestly. let's talk about the Diamondbacks are getting, since I think they got the better end of this deal. Diamondbacks are getting a really, really good center fielder. I mean, they already had a really good center fielder who also just happened to be named Marte, Ketel Marte, but he's naturally an infielder, an infielder, mostly like a second baseman, shortstop. So now they're adding a great center fielder in a league where aren't many great center fielders. There aren't many great center fielders in this time for Major League Baseball. I mean, obviously, there's the best player in the game, possibly the greatest ever, Mike Trout, who is a center fielder. There's also guys like Aaron Hicks and Ender Inciarte, guys like that who are center fielders. But besides that, center field is a pretty weak position in Major League Baseball. Like a lot of teams looking for a center fielder. For example, the Mets and obviously the Diamondbacks were looking for one as well, and they got Starling Marte, who he hits for power. He steals bases. He normally hits around 290, and he plays pretty good defense over there too, in center field. Solid player, and he's a veteran. He's been doing it for a while. I'm pretty sure you get 2 more years of control over him. Really good trade for them. And let's talk about what the Diamondbacks gave up. They gave up these 2 prospects. One is a pitcher, and one is I'm pretty sure is an infielder. They are very highly touted prospects, but they're very young, and there's a chance that these guys might not. There's a chance these guys might be busts. They're like one of them, Leo Peguero, is a major bust candidate. Brandon Malone is a pitcher. He's 20 years old, and he looks like he might actually have a big chance at coming up and being a great pitcher for the Diamondbacks. There's also, for the Pirates. Leo Peguero is a major bust candidate, I hear, but you never know with these prospects. I mean, some of them, you may think they're a bust candidate, and then they figure it out. They figure out what they were doing wrong, and they become superstars. So many guys have done that. I mean, Garrett Cole, right, with the Pirates, like he was always an alright pitcher. He was expected to be like the next big thing, but he became like just like a solid number 3 with the Pirates, right? And then he goes to the Astros and he becomes like the best pitcher in all of baseball. So things like that could happen, but with the Pirates, they're trying to rebuild. That has to be their goal, and I think they just got to keep trading stars. I think the next guy to go is Josh Bell. Keep trading your good players. And my message to the Pirates, which, I obviously know Ben Sherrington's not listening to this. He's their general manager. He's most likely not listening to this. But the Pirates cannot make a push this season. Look, if they're like the best team in baseball, which I highly doubt they're going to be, but if they are, then you can kind of make some trades. But we've seen it before. Like the Pirates, they'll be like contending for a second wild card spot, and then they'll make a trade, a stupid trade. Like they traded for Chris Archer, and they traded Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow, and Shane Baz to the Tampa Bay Rays for Chris Archer. That was a stupid trade, and you didn't even need to wait for Chris Archer to put on a Pirates uniform to think that was stupid. Right when we heard about that trade, I knew it was stupid. I knew it was a stupid trade. Like those are 3 great prospects, and you're trading them for a guy who's not a solidified ace. He was pretty good a couple years ago for 2 years in his career, and honestly, ever since he's been in the Pirates uniform, he's been terrible. I think he had an ERA over 5 this year, and he had an ERA over 4 last year with the Pirates. And meanwhile, Austin Meadows was an all-star this year. Tyler Glasnow, if he would not have gotten hurt, I don't even know what we could have seen from him because he was phenomenal. Like he had a chance to have had one of the best pitching seasons in a long time. He in his first 5 games, I think he had an ERA under 1, and each of those games was like 7 innings, no earned runs, 15 strikeouts, and then he got hurt in a game against the Yankees. But imagine if he would have had that full season. I can't even tell what we were gonna see. But And they also gave up Shane Baz, who's one of the top prospects in all of baseball. So, I mean, the Pirates, they just have to stop thinking that they can win. They have to just rebuild, build up the farm system. Because I'll tell you what, the Reds, Cubs, Brewers, Cardinals, 3 years from now, those teams might be rebuilding. And, I think the Pirates in 3-4 years might have a big chance to contend. And I think they just got to stop thinking that they could win now. Just wait for it, build up the farm system, bring up the young guys, and then you can start. Then when you have a championship core, and then you can start making these small trades that you like to make. But till then, you just got to wait. So, yeah.
Chris, that was really in depth. Really hit a lot of the major situations going on. With that, something's coming up on Sunday. No, it is not badminton. It's not ultimate frisbee. It's the bowl of the super, and we have two teams you would really not expect in there. Midway in the year you expected them, but beginning of this year, I don't think anybody would have thought the 49ers were definitely going to be in there. They didn't really have much of a competition getting there, but now they got the biggest competition coming up against them with the Chiefs, who people thought for sure would do really well. And even the 3 games that Mahomes was injured, they persevered. So we got a heck of a game coming up. Halftime show? I don't know. I'm not really looking into that. I think my mom would be more interested in that. But the game itself, I think we got something to look forward to. It's going to be intense. 2 good defenses, pretty decent offenses. We got people giving their opinion, analyzation of how we got here and what to expect.
Hey everyone, this is Colin here, and as you know, the Super Bowl actually is Sunday. Now, you may be wondering who's playing in the Super Bowl. No, it is not the New England Patriots versus some random NFC team. We have the Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers. What I'll do first is I'll go into the AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs. Now, so after last year, Kansas City was kind of suffering. They had a very big loss in the AFC Championship game last year to the New England Patriots, where they maybe could have won that game if the overtime rules had been different. Like, Kansas City had a pretty good chance of even making it to the Super Bowl last year, but Tom Brady played like Tom Brady, and it was just over for them. Now, going into this year, the Chiefs had a lot of expectations, and for the most part, at the beginning of the year, they did live up to it. However, things looked really bad for the Chiefs during Week 7. During Week 7, they were on the road to Denver to play the Broncos. The Chiefs would win this game 30-6, but that was not the main story. Patrick Mahomes got injured on a QB sneak, and people were fearing for the worst. It didn't look like a good injury, and everyone was worrying that their star quarterback, and who I think is now the best quarterback in the league, was going to be out for the season. And Matt Moore started a couple games for them. He kind of held pace. They weren't great in any of them. He still lost a couple games, but, they were able to hold their own. But as it turns out, Patrick Mahomes was okay, and he was able to come back. And once he came back, the Chiefs went on an absolute tear. They finished off the regular season by winning 6 games in a row. Now, they finished off the season with a 12-4 record, but also so did the Patriots. However, they did hold a tiebreaker over the Patriots in Week 17 because they beat them in a 23-16 win in Foxborough. Now, so this means that you would think that the Chiefs would have the second seed automatically, right? No, it wasn't that easy. Going into Week 17, the Chiefs needed the Miami Dolphins of all teams to beat the New England Patriots in order for them to achieve a first-round bye. And believe it or not, the Miami Dolphins did it. The Dolphins went into New England and beat the Patriots in a game that no one really saw coming. So out of nowhere, the Chiefs now were thrust into the number 2 seed in the AFC. And how did they handle it? Well, the postseason did not start off well for the Chiefs. In the first quarter of the divisional game against the Texans, they were down 24-0. Most of the reason why this happened, I think, was because of their special teams, and that wasn't really going well for them. But out of nowhere, people were starting to count the Chiefs out. But then they just clicked, man. I don't know. That offense just turned on. Patrick Mahomes just went off. He had about, 5 touchdown passes that game. And in total, they had the whole entire team had 7 touchdowns. From that point on, when they were down 24-0, the Chiefs would go on a 51-7 run, as crazy as that sounds, in order to win that game 51-31. Now, the Titans were a big part of this whole entire postseason, where the Chiefs really didn't have to verse any of the real big AFC threats that people saw going into the playoffs, as the Titans were able to knock out both the Patriots and they were able to knock out the Ravens. Now, in any normal circumstances, you would think that in the second round, the Chiefs would have to verse the Patriots, and in the championship game, they would have to see Baltimore. But the Titans did the job for them. So it turns out, the AFC Championship game ended up being the Chiefs versus the Titans. We could have easily have gotten this game in the wild card had the Patriots have not lost to the Dolphins, but they did. So here we are. Now, in this AFC Championship game, once again, the Titans actually got off to a pretty good start. They had a 10-0 lead. Derrick Henry was starting the show in the first half, what he was doing for the rest of the postseason against the Patriots and the Ravens. But then once again, the Chiefs their offense just went off. They ended up winning that game. They kind of ran away with it, I think, in the second half. They kind of limited with the lead they had. They kind of forced the Titans to throw the ball more, which is something that they weren't really able to do well. I mean, Tannehill, he did a good job for them all season, but when it really came down to that, I don't think he was really prepared for that. They ended up stuffing Derrick Henry, and the Chiefs ended up making the Super Bowl. They ended up beating the Titans by a score of 35-24. I think this game kind of was more far out of reach than it really seemed, because by the time we got to halftime, I think we all kind of knew it was over because the Chiefs were going to get the ball back. And when that Chiefs offense starts to click, man, I don't know if there's really any way you can necessarily stop them. So this means now the Chiefs are playing in the Super Bowl. Now you may be wondering what's the type of team they have around them. They are coached by Andy Reid. Now Andy Reid, he is one of the most winningest coaches in NFL history who has not gotten the Super Bowl. Andy Reid came into this team back in about 2012 or 2013, and they were not in a good situation. However, he helped to turn this team around. That was during the Alex Smith days, back when they weren't necessarily a real threat in the playoffs, so they would still make some noise. But Andy Reid, he coached for Philadelphia prior to Kansas City, and he actually did get a chance at the Super Bowl before, back in 2004, where he did play the Patriots and Bill Belichick, but he ended up losing. So I think that for him, this is kind of a redemption, because, I mean, a lot of people, Andy Reid has not really been in this situation a lot, and I think a lot of people want to see how he's going to handle it, if he can really hold up to the pressure. But besides that, this is actually the first time the Chiefs have made the Super Bowl since 1969, believe it or not. Back then, it was Super Bowl IV, and they defeated the Minnesota Vikings in order to win the Super Bowl, and they haven't been there since then. But what changed? Well, I'll start off with the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes, the MVP of the league last year, he's just been Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's really lived up to the hype that people expected coming off the MVP season, and he has him here. Now, the running backs, they're not really that great, but they don't really need to be when you have that much of a passing game. I mean, Damian Williams has been kind of a solid option at running back, but he hasn't been someone they really relied on. But their wide receivers, McCole Hartman, Tyreek Hill, DeMarcus Robinson, Sammy Watkins, who had a huge catch in the AFC Championship game, and of course, you can't forget about their tight end, Travis Kelce, who may be one of the best, if not the best tight end in the whole entire NFL. Their offensive line is pretty good, too. They have some players. Eric Fisher, who they actually invested a first-round pick on back, I think it was in the 2014 draft. The defense is pretty solid, too. I mean, I know a lot of people have always said this would be the downfall of the team, but, I mean, so far this season, they haven't really experienced it. The pass rush, Frank Clark, Chris Jones, Darren Lee, I mean, they have a lot of good pieces there in terms of rushing the passer. And also, they brought in Terrell Suggs, who was a veteran back in Baltimore, so he's been pretty good for them, you know. And also, you can't forget about their secondary, because they have Tyrann Mathieu, otherwise known as a Honey Badger, as their safety, who they ended up getting from the Texans, and they ended up signing him in free agency last year, and that's been a very good pickup as he's played dividends on that defense. And, you know, the Chiefs, I think they're going to be ready for this game against the 49ers, you know. So I think that definitely they're going to rely a lot on their offense, but I wouldn't expect their defense to be that off either. It's just going to come down to how hot that offense can get, because when that offense gets hot, I said this before, I think the Chiefs are a lot like kind of an NFL version of the prime Golden State Warriors, in the way that if you could be down by 20 points to them, but if they get hot, then there's nothing much you can really do about it. That being said, let's move on to the NFC. Now, the NFC champion this season was the San Francisco 49ers. No one really going into the season had the 49ers be in this position, but they started off the year on a tear. They were the last undefeated team remaining. They started off with an 8-0 record, and you know, they had some losses later on in the year. They lost to Seattle, lost to Baltimore, even lost to Atlanta, but I mean, overall, they finished off with a 13-3 record. This was a very good team. They ended up earning the number 1 seed in the NFC, and in the playoffs, they kind of pretty easily defeated the Minnesota Vikings in the first game. I mean, the Vikings had it close in the first half, but the 49ers just took over from that point. The defense was suffocating. They ended up only holding the Vikings to, I believe it was 21 rushing yards. And then in the NFC Championship game, they versed the Packers in a game which I originally thought the Packers were going to win. Well, I was proven wrong, as the 49ers really got after the Packers, and there's not that much the Packers could really do offensively. I mean, really until the end is when the Packers started to make a move, but at that point, the game was already kind of too far behind them. And in that game, the 49ers ended up winning 37-20, and now they're in the Super Bowl. Now, this is the first time the 49ers made the Super Bowl since 2012. If you don't remember, that was back in the Colin Kaepernick days for them. And back then, they actually, Kaepernick was pretty good back then. You know, they also had a great defense led by Patrick Willis and them, but that was also the Super Bowl, if you remember, where there actually was a blackout, and they ended up losing that Super Bowl to the Ravens in a game which they maybe could have won, but they were in a 4th and goal situation near the end of the game, and they couldn't convert it. So now the 49ers are back here again, and how did they do it? Now, the head coach, Kyle Shanahan, his father, Mike Shanahan, used to coach in the NFL, and he's actually been a pretty good coach for them. And moving on to the quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo backed up Tom Brady for numerous years in New England, won multiple Super Bowls as a backup. Originally, Bill Belichick was said to have wanted Garoppolo to be his quarterback in the future of New England, but the owner stepped in and said, no, I want Tom Brady. So they ended up trading Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers for a second-round pick. And now Jimmy Garoppolo has really flourished in his role here in San Francisco. I mean, they never really needed him to do too much, but I mean, he's been pretty good for them because, I mean, you just look at this defense they have. Their pass rush is insane. You got Nick Bosa, DeForest Buckner, D Ford. This pass rush is really one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. They can really get to the quarterback at any will and really shut down a running game. As I said before, both the Vikings and Packers running game was really slowed down in that game against both the Vikings and Packers. And also in that defense, the secondary also led by a very familiar face from the past, Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman suffered an injury back in the Seattle days, which made Seattle cut him, but he came back to the 49ers, and he's actually very much looked like his old Legion of Boom self. And, I mean, he's putting good production. The rest of that defense, I think you have to watch out for. They have a good linebacker core led by Quan Alexander. But moving back to the offense, their running game has really been good here. They have had Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, and Matt Breida be their big free-headed punch. I'm not sure if they're going to have Tevin Coleman for the Super Bowl. He got hurt in that Green Bay game, and his status kind of questionable right now, up in the air. So we'll see. But even then, with Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert, who went off in the NFC Championship game, I think they'll be in good hands. The passing game is pretty good, too. Dante Pettis, Deebo Samuel, Emmanuel Sanders, who they acquired midseason. And, of course, once again, much like their Chiefs, a very dominant tight end in George Kittle, who I think really has really maybe in the consideration of one of the best quarterbacks in the whole entire – one of the best tight ends in the whole entire NFL. Offensive line, too, something that they invested high draft picks in with Mike McGlinchey, and they ended up taking in the first round last year, I believe, or a couple of years ago. So, once again, the 49ers have a very good roster. Now – you may be wondering, what is my prediction for the Super Bowl? I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, and here's why. Now, obviously, everyone knows how good of a pass rush the 49ers have, and really, it's the best in the league, I think. But, I think that that's not going to really matter that much because the Chiefs were never really relying on the running game, and I think they know that too. Patrick Mahomes, and also if they come after Patrick Mahomes and he's passing, he's a very mobile quarterback in the fact that he can really escape the defense, so I think that that's not really going to be a problem. It's really going to come down to the fact of whether or not Richard Sherman is going to be able to keep up with guys like McCall Hardman, Tyreek Hill, who are very fast, and I don't know if he's really going to be able to do that for some portion. Now, I know a lot of people don't really give the Chiefs defense credit, but at least their defensive front is pretty good, and I think that's going to pay a lot against the 49ers rushing attack because that's really what makes that offense going. Really, the Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida trio, and I think they can slow that down to a certain degree, and it's going to come to a point where I think that if the Chiefs are consistently scoring touchdowns in the game, the 49ers are going to be forced to play from behind, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to throw the ball more. Now, I've been kind of critical of Jimmy Garoppolo in the past, but I don't know how he's going to respond to the situation because obviously he's watched many Super Bowls from the sideline, but he's never really got the opportunity to play in one. So, I think that he kind of has the experience from watching it personally on the sideline, but we still really don't know how he's going to respond to this. But Jimmy Garoppolo really has not needed to do that much this postseason. I remember I saw a stat that really he's only really thrown for like under 200 yards or about 200 yards this whole entire postseason in the two games that she's played, which is crazy to think about, but it's true. But I mean, the 49ers have a pretty good receiving core. I mean, obviously with Kittle and Sanders and Debo Samuel. But I mean, I think that the Chiefs can slow that down, and I think it's going to come to a point much like the Titans game. I mean, against the Titans are looking good in the first half. I think the 49ers can do the same, but it just hits a certain point where the Chiefs offense just finds its groove, and you can't really stop it. And I think the 49ers might experience that to some degree, or I think entirely. And the Chiefs' defense really has not gotten that much credit, I think, in another way, where after falling down from behind 24-0 against the Texans, that defense only gave up 7 points, which is very impressive against the offense led by Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins. And I mean, also against the Titans, really, after the Titans took a 17-7 lead, you only saw the Titans score another 7 points. And that was kind of a factor of them being able to force Tannehill to throw the ball more. But once again, though, going back to the Chiefs' defense, they only held Derrick Henry in that game, who was going off all playoffs to only 69 rushing yards. And that's crazy considering how much of a run he was on. He had 180 yards in 3 consecutive games. And if they can do somewhat remotely that to the 49ers rushing attack, if they can hold them to about 70 yards, I think that's really going to force Jimmy Garoppolo to throw the ball more. And it's going to be a great game, I think. The 49ers and Chiefs, the NFL really hasn't seen this much of an unexpected matchup, I think, in a few years, especially considering how much of a reign the Patriots had over the whole entire AFC. And I'm really looking forward to this game. Like I said, I see the Chiefs winning this game. I'm going to say probably by a score of 31-21 Chiefs. Overall, looking forward to this game, and I guess we'll see what happens.
Jump straight into the predictions. I think the Chiefs should win the Super Bowl. The 49ers defense, it's one of the best defenses in the league, but I feel like Mahomes is going to be too much for them. And the 49ers have a nice running game, but if the Chiefs are able to hold back their running game, I feel like they should be able to stop them, and Chiefs are going to come out on Sunday.
Yeah, if Garoppolo wins this, it will say things about the Patriots and the way that they build up their quarterbacks, I think. It's true, Garoppolo has not had crazy numbers, but that's because the 49ers have been so diverse in the way they've been attacking for each game. And the defense has actually scored, I think, in each game, so that the offense hasn't even been on the field to allow Garoppolo to get close to 300 yards throwing. So, with that, this game is going to be intense. I mean, Shakira's going to be shaking it midway. The people are going to be showing off their Pepsi ads and Dorito chips. And, yeah, I think the only people who are going to be truly invested for one side winning over the other is California and Missouri. Everybody else is just going to enjoy just a great show. So looking forward to it, and very happy and grateful that us as Salesians were able to raise enough toys for Toys for Tots to achieve not only the gracious caliber of being men for others and providing 400 toys to those in need during Christmas, but also we got a day off the day after, and thank goodness, because me as a teacher, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to do some amazing things like grading. So, back to what's going on around in sports. Briefly, just want to do a shout out to Salesian basketball. Varsity is ranked 10th in New York State right now, and they're playing at 6 o'clock today. I really want to go and stop by and see how they do. If they win, I think it may increase their chances of going up in the ranks. I believe they're 13-4. I may be wrong on the record, but it's somewhere around that. Varsity is just they're figuring it out. They're finding a way to work together. They got a freshman on the team who's playing among these juniors and seniors really quick, makes a lot of good shots, and they're just working in tandem. It's been great. JV need a little bit of work. They're a scrappy team. Their record's not too bad. They're pretty up there, over 500. And they need work, and the freshmen are bullying everybody right now. A lot of tall kids, a lot of fast kids, and they're doing an excellent job. A lot of great passing. Coach that we picked up this year has been outstanding. and really looking forward to them in the playoffs when we get there and giving our updates about that. So now we're at a point in the show where we have a little bit of hedge your bets, a little bit of what you think. For baseball, I want to pose something. I want to pose something with baseball. Derek Jeter got in the Hall of Fame. One person didn't vote for him. It's okay. I think they wanted Rivera to be the only one who gets unanimous votes. And understandably so, there's a lot of people to consider on the Hall of Fame ballot. And Larry Walker, thank God, last year on the ballot, finally gets in. Well-deserved. Amazing defensive player. Insane WAR. Hit just as well on the road as he did at home, and it was crazy that they waited that long because of the Coors Field curse. Here's my question to you guys. Based on who is on the ballot, who do you think should be reconsidered or fully considered to be in the Hall of Fame?
Wow. A lot of guys out there who should be considered to be in the Hall of Fame. One guy I want to touch on really briefly. He's not on the ballot anymore. In fact, I think this past year was his last year. Was Cliff Lee. A lot of people don't think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he definitely needs to be considered. I mean, great playoff pitcher. Big game pitcher. I mean, how many times has he been in the World Series and had a big game that he pitched? I mean, look, you think about it. World Series 2009, Game 1. Through I think it was like a shutout against the Yankees. Also in that postseason, he had another shutout. I mean, just fantastic. Then he went to the Rangers in 2010, and he shut out the Yankees again in the playoffs that year. And that was the reason that hurt more as a Yankee fan. I didn't watch that game, but looking back on it now, it just kind of hurts because he was actually rumored to be traded to the Yankees, but then the Yankees didn't want to give up Eduardo Nunez to get him. So he went to the Rangers for a couple of prospects, including Justin Smoke to the Mariners. It's kind of weird we're talking about these guys as prospects. Meanwhile, they're like veterans right now. But Cliff Lee went to the Rangers and he shut down the Yankees in the playoffs. He shut down the Rays in the ALDS. Then in the ALCS he shut down the Yankees. Then he went to the World Series and shut down the Giants, only to lose that game to the Giants, and then the Giants won the World Series that year. But he definitely needs to be considered. Paul Konerko is another guy who should be considered. I don't think the defense was that good for him, but fantastic hitter over there in Chicago. I don't think he was the same time as Frank Thomas. I don't know. I'm not too sure. But those are two guys I think should definitely be considered.
I think Omar Vizquel should be considered. A small middle infielder. He is really fast and could get on base a lot. He's a career 300 hitter. He'll get you on base. He'll hit some home runs, but mainly singles. And he's a great defender, making only about 7 errors in his entire career. So he should be considered, and also Adam Dunn. Now, this might be controversial, but he's the original 3 outcomes guy. He either hit you a home run, get walked, or strike out. Wow, while this isn't very good, he's a great power hitter. Will come in clutch when you need him. Won't hit for average. He'll just drive in runners, hit home runs, get walks, or strike out, basically. A true 3 outcomes guy. He should be in a few years.
Just to make a small joke. First, Omar Vizquel in comparison to Ozzie Smith. Yes, absolutely one of the best defensive players in the league. But just to make a small joke, growing up with Adam Dunn as a Red, we used to always say that his nickname should have been Adam One and Done because it was either a home run or a strikeout. And what a Canadian. Just a tall, brutish man with wavy, curly hair. I don't miss him.
Yeah, I just want to give you guys a list of names of guys who who were on the ballot in 2020 who didn't get inducted. Kurt Schilling, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, as he said, Omar Vizquel. Todd Helton is a guy who I think definitely needs to be considered. Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa, Andy Pettitte, Bobby Abreu, Paul Konerko. He got taken off, I'm pretty sure, this year. Yeah. Jason Giambi, but he had the steroids issue. That's why he didn't get in. Alfonso Soriano, I think he should have been considered as well. He was a really good player. Eric Chavez, Raul Ibanez, J.J. Putz, Adam Dunn, like he said, Rafael Furcal, Josh Beckett, Chone Figgins, Brian Roberts, Heath Bell, Carlos Pena, Andrew Jones, really solid center fielder with the Braves for quite some time. I remember. Well, I don't remember because I wasn't even alive yet. But I watched watching the highlights from 1996 World Series. He was like 19 years old, Andrew Jones, and he was hitting home runs against the Yankees, only to lose that series to the Yankees. We also have Jeff Kent, Gary Sheffield, Billy Wagner. I think needs to be in the Hall of Fame. One of the best, probably the best left-handed relief pitcher of all time. Roger Clemens, one of the best pitchers of all time, but had that big issue with steroids. And same thing about Barry Bonds, one of the best players of all time, but I don't know, steroids just makes you question that, and that's why these guys aren't on the Hall of Fame ballot. But yeah.
Yeah, just to add my own opinions about who should be in the Hall of Fame. Todd Helton, man. I don't care if he played at Coors Field. That guy was a Gold Glove fiend. His WAR as a player is above the average of those who are in the Hall of Fame. Hit like crazy. He hit over 300 for his career. Was just a stand-up guy. Great eye. Lots of walks. Great. Played his whole career in Colorado. Him and Tony Gwynn, when I was growing up, used to be my favorite hitters just to watch them, lefty and righty in comparison. So, yeah, I think he should be heavily considered. I hope this Larry Walker has broken the Coors Field curse, because it should be put to the side. These guys were so good and so important for this team, and if they're going to go and prevent people from going in because of the stadium they played in, then we should look at people differently for shopping at Walmart. Okay, never mind, rescind that. People already do that, and we shouldn't do that. Anyway, next question I have. Phillip Rivers is discussed to have moved from his San Diego home to he's moved from a San Diego apartment to his Florida home permanently. He's got a lot of kids. I think he's got 9 kids, maybe more. The man loves his wife. He loves his life. And he loved being a Charger. But in recent years, it's kind of been a different club. And the defense hasn't been what it used to be in the past. And the offense has been very difficult with all the injuries. So, hedge your bets. Where do you think Phillip Rivers is going?
All right. Hey, everyone, this is Colin again, and I'm going to give out 4 NFL teams that I think could be very viable options for Phillip Rivers. I'm going to start off with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, at this point, Phillip Rivers gets older on in his career. He obviously, playing in San Diego and Los Angeles, played in a very warm, weather area, so I don't think that he's necessarily going to be that for going to a place where that's cold weather, because that's not what he's used to. But the Indianapolis Colts, although they are in Indiana, they do have an indoor stadium. And I think another big factor, too, is that as Phillip Rivers gets older, he's not going to want to get hit as much. And as you know, the Indianapolis Colts actually do have a very great O-line, obviously led by Quentin Nelson. And the Colts might be looking for a quarterback because obviously Andrew Luck retired unexpectedly going into the season. They were kind of forced to start Jacoby Brissett, who was pretty solid for them, but I mean, overall, not really a long-term option. It's kind of a transitional period, so I think that Phillip Rivers could be a really good part of kind of forming that transition to him to maybe a new quarterback. And, maybe he can even improve their record because the Colts last year were 7-9, and I think that they have definitely the talent to do better, but they really need a new quarterback, I think, to really push them over the edge. And maybe Phillip Rivers could do that. I mean, I don't know. I think that'd be a very interesting option for them. Next, I'm going to move to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, obviously, Rivers has moved to Florida, and one of the teams in Florida are the Buccaneers, and they may be in need of a quarterback because of how Jameis Winston was playing. Now, as you know, Jameis Winston actually did throw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, but he also had 5,000 yards, so Winston is a very interesting player in the fact that you really don't know what you're going to get out of him, and I don't know if that's really something the Buccaneers want to tie their future to, and I've heard Bruce Arians, the head coach of the Buccaneers, actually come out and say that he thinks he could do better with a quarterback besides Winston, and that's not exactly what you're really looking for as a player to hear from your head coach. That kind of vote of confidence was not really there from Bruce Arians. So I think that he might kind of pressure the Buccaneers into looking into another direction. And I think that if Phillip Rivers is kind of committed to only really staying in Florida, I think that'd be an option that would make a lot of sense where he could kind of take over for Jameis Winston and start for the Buccaneers. Buccaneers didn't end off the season very bad too. I believe they also had about a 7-9, 8-8, 6-10 record around that range. So maybe Phillip Rivers could also push them over the hump there because they have very great receivers, obviously Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and I think that putting Phillip Rivers there, if he played like how he did even just 2-3 years ago, would be very good for them. It could really help them going forward. Now I'm gonna bring up two teams which I'm not really sure if it's gonna happen, but it'll be very interesting. I'm going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders here. Now, the Raiders, obviously, now are going to be moving to Las Vegas, and they're probably looking to sell tickets, obviously, but, coached by John Gruden, I don't think John Gruden's really going to necessarily settle for just being mediocre anymore. He's going to want to start winning. Now, Derek Carr has been kind of a very consistent quarterback for them overall these years, but they may move to look on. John Gruden has not necessarily voiced his vote of confidence for Derek Carr staying permanently as quarterback. And I think that the Raiders are going to look into a variety of options here. I think that Phillip Rivers is also a very viable one. And it really makes for some interest in football, especially with this being their first year in Las Vegas. So this is really something I think we should look into. And now, for my last option, I'm going to go something very interesting, the New England Patriots. Now, if Tom Brady leaves the Patriots are kind of going to be really left with nothing. Now, so wherever the Patriots Tom Brady leaves, obviously they still have a very great core around them, a team that went 12-4 last year, and if it were not for them losing to the Dolphins, it would have been a first-round bye team. So I don't think they're necessarily going to really settle for a rebuild at this point. I think they're going to be kind of going through a transition process, so they're going to be looking for a new quarterback. And I mean, at this point, from where they are in the draft, I don't think they can really get any great talent. Obviously, they're going to be near the bottom of the first round of the draft, where you're really not going to find necessarily a franchise quarterback. Unless they do go to Jimmy Garoppolo route, where they try to find a sleeper quarterback in later rounds, but I'm not sure if that's really the best road for them to go. So at this point, Tom Brady was an old quarterback, so why not go with another one at Phillip Rivers? He may end up working out for them well. Obviously, there's enough pieces around them for it to work. And I can really see that kind of happening, especially with Belichick. I mean, I'm not really sure how much more years Belichick has as necessarily a head coach, but I mean, I think that he definitely wants to win, and it could also help Belichick's legacy if he can win more, maybe even more Super Bowls without Brady. So for Phillip Rivers to come to the Patriots, that could be pretty big for them. And yeah, so I think if Phillip Rivers is to start for an NFL team, I could see it definitely being one of those four teams: the Indianapolis Colts, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Las Vegas Raiders, and New England Patriots.
That's fantastic. I like all those options. Now, moving on from football, we're going to move on to football, which is not how you pronounce soccer, but is how most of the world refers to the beautiful sport chess game known as soccer. One of the few games aside from, actually no, it's the only game that ends in a tie now. Now that hockey has changed their rules. So we have our opinions on what's going on in these crazy leagues across the pond.
All right, so we're not gonna really talk about the leagues. We're gonna talk about this one thing called, which I don't know if you don't know, if it's called the Champions League, the UEFA Champions League. It's pretty much a tournament that involves the best teams in Europe, or in other words, the best teams in the world, because Europe has all the best teams, all the elite players, all the best players. Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, all these players, they play in Europe. It's just where it's just all the elite teams, all the big teams with all the money. Manchester United, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Juventus, Barcelona, all the best teams play in Europe. So this tournament is one of the most watched tournaments in all of the world. In fact, the Champions League final is apparently the most watched sporting event in the world, which kind of seems crazy. But then again, you have to understand it's the most watched in the world. It's not the United States. United States, probably the Super Bowl would be the most watched, or NBA Finals, World Series. But a lot of people watch the Champions League final, and in the world, it's definitely the most watched sporting event. Right now, we're in the round of 16 in this tournament, and some really good teams we have here. Soccer is one of those sports. It's probably the only sport out there where the best team always beats the worst team. Right? There really aren't many surprises. There might normally be surprises where if two good teams play against each other, there'll be comebacks. There'll be certain comebacks. But really, if a great team is playing a not so great team, the great team's gonna win. That's just how it works. Honestly, a lot of sports here, and I mean, if you like it or not, I mean, I understand a lot of sports here in the United States, like baseball, the worst team could always beat the best team, but that's just not really how it is in soccer. So that's something we have to keep in mind. But I'm just gonna make some predictions in this round of 16. First match we have is Atletico Madrid against Liverpool. This is a rough match, a rough prediction because these are two pretty good teams. Well, Liverpool is the best team in the world. I mean, that whole team is just, I mean, they're fantastic. They're great. I mean, they're just tearing through the Premier League, which is one of the best leagues in the world, the English Premier League, with just cruising through it. They haven't lost a game. They're undefeated. They only lost one game this entire season, and that was in the Champions League group stage. But they still won that group, and now they're facing Atletico Madrid. The first game is in Madrid. Atletico Madrid are a really good team, but they've kind of been struggling with scoring goals. They brought in a young guy named Joao Felix from Portugal, and he's supposed to be the next big thing, and he still has a ton of time. I think he's around 21 years old, 22 years old, or maybe even younger than that. I don't know, but fairly young, really young, and he just hasn't been as good as they thought he would be, and overall they're struggling to score goals. But they have a really good defense, and they have one of the best goalies in the world, Jan Oblak from Slovenia, a really good team. Liverpool, however, they're just fantastic. That defense with Virgil van Dijk is incredible, and Andrew Robertson. They have Alisson Becker in goal. Roberto Firmino, Mo Salah. Some people like to call Mo Salah overrated, but I mean, he's still really good. And they also have Sadio Mane, who's consistently a great player. So I think Liverpool is going to take this game. Another thing to keep in mind is that these are two-leg matches. Matches. It's pretty much, these are two matches that are going to be played. This match coming up will be played in Madrid. So the way it works is let's talk about this. Let's say this Atletico Madrid Liverpool match. The score from this upcoming match will continue to the next match, except one game's going to be in Madrid and one game's going to be in Liverpool, and that's how it works. And then if let's say it's a tie after these two legs, it's the team that has the more away goals, the more goals on the road. That's the team that moves on. Or else, if they both had the same amount of away goals, they would go to extra time, and whoever wins that wins the game and then moves on to the next round. But I think Liverpool is going to take this game. The first game's in Madrid, but having that second leg in Liverpool, in Anfield, where the crowd is crazy over there, all those crazy British fans, it's definitely going to be a rough match for Atletico Madrid. Now we have Borussia Dortmund versus Paris Saint-Germain. I got PSG winning this game. They have Neymar, a fantastic offense with Mbappe. Really good team. There's not much to say there. Dortmund's a great team as well, but PSG just is elite. They haven't won. They didn't lose a game in the group stage, and Dortmund came in second. So I'm pretty sure Dortmund came in second. Dortmund came in second to Barcelona. So honestly, there's not much separating those two teams, but I'm just gonna go with PSG. Next game we have is a bit of an underdog matchup at Atalanta versus Valencia. Atalanta, kind of a surprise team. They I know I said there aren't many surprise teams in soccer, but they were definitely a surprise team. They're from Italy. I'm gonna say they take that match. Next game we have is Tottenham versus RB Leipzig. This is a tough match too because Tottenham has a good defense. They are a great attacking team, but RB Leipzig, they have Timo Werner, the young German striker, and he's just been phenomenal for them this season. And they're doing well in the German Bundesliga as well. But Tottenham having Tottenham having the first game at home. I think they're gonna score. I would say they score 3, and then it goes to Germany, and I think Tottenham takes that game. This next one is FC Bayern Munich versus Chelsea. I'm gonna say Bayern takes this one. Bayern's the more experienced team. The second leg is gonna be at their home stadium, the Allianz Arena in Munich, Germany. I think that's gonna be key. Obviously, Chelsea's a very young team. If you remember last year, we actually talked about their young goalie and the problems they had. I think Chelsea's a good team. They're in 4th place in the Premier League, but they're too young, and I think the experience for Bayern's definitely going to pay off. The next match we have is Barcelona versus Napoli. Napoli is a solid team. They're not doing too well in the Italian Serie A, but Barcelona, they're still a good team. Barcelona is an elite team, one of the best teams in the world, but they're kind of struggling in the Spanish La Liga Santander. Kind of struggling. I think they're in 3rd. I think they're in 2nd place behind Real Madrid. But I think they're gonna take this game. They're too good to lose to Napoli. The next matchup we have is Olympique Lyonnais, the French team against Juventus. This is Juventus all the way. Olympique has 0 chance, honestly. I think they have a 20% chance. Let me see. On Google, they have a 19% chance to win this next upcoming game. And, I mean, the first leg is going to be in France, and the second leg is going to be in Torino, Italy. This Juventus got this one all the way. They're too good to lose the game. They've been tearing through the Serie A. They lost their last game against Napoli, but they're going to easily take this. I'd be surprised if Lyon scores 2 goals. And then this last match we have is Real Madrid against Manchester City. This is the biggest match possibly because these are 2 fantastic teams. Manchester City, Real Madrid's winning the La Liga Santander League this year. They're in 1st place. Manchester City's in 2nd, but then again, you got Liverpool who's winning the Premier League. They're undefeated so far. They're fantastic. So Manchester City's too good, but I'm sorry, Liverpool is just a little better. But Real Madrid versus Man City, that's a tough match. Real Madrid's got a great defense, and the offense is coming together with Eden Hazard, and Karim Benzema has been really good. But Manchester City having that second game at home, also just being that great attacking team that they are, and not having a terrible defense, I think Manchester City is going to take this one over the 2 legs.
Excellent analysis. The reason America is not very good at soccer is, I don't know if you've seen the MLS league, but no player can keep the ball very close to their body. There are so many back and forths because these guys are constantly kicking the ball forward. It drives me crazy to watch. It's the reason why you only have 4 teams in the league. When it gets to the playoffs, you actually have legitimate matches. Watching a Red Bull game live one time, I saw the goalie frustrated because all he did was defend as much as he could because his defenders kind of just stood there and picked their noses. It was an awful game to watch. It was against, I believe, Colorado, and the other team was very bearded, and all they did was just kick it far, and one guy cherry-picked as best he could to not get offsides. It was boring soccer. This stuff is legitimate. This is chess matches. This is people who know how to keep the ball close by. It's legitimate. It is not the Oscars of the Mexican League or some of those South American leagues where, man, the flops and flips, they're beautiful. Dwayne Wade and LeBron would definitely look at that and give them their own awards. So with that, I think we've had a pretty large level of discussion. And we have more that we'll bring to you next week now that we're back from midterms. So for all of you listening in, thank you so much for your attentive ear. And we'll give you the updates next week. Same place. The Salesian Podcast.